हेलो माय डियर फ्रेंड्स, कैसे हैं आप लोग। उम्मीद करती हूँ आप सब अच्छे होंगे। अराइवल ऑन हिम्मल स्ट्रीट फ्रॉम द बुक थीफ रिटन बाय मार्कस ज्यूजैक। Arrival on Himmel Street. That last time, that red sky. How does a book thief end up kneeling and howling and flanked by a man made heap of ridiculous greasy cooked up rubble? Years earlier, the start was snow. The time had come for what? A spectacularly tragic moment. Our train was moving quickly. It was packed with humans. A 6-year-old boy died in the third carriage. The book thief and her brother were traveling down towards Munich, where they would soon be given over to foster parents. We now know, of course, that the boy didn't make it. How it happened? There was an intense spurt of coughing, almost an inspired spurt, and soon after, nothing. When the coughing stopped, there was nothing but the nothingness of life moving on with a shuffle or a near silent twitch. A suddenness found its way onto his lips then, which were a corroded brown color and peeling like old paint. It in desperate need of redoing. Their mother was asleep. I entered the train. My feet stepped through the cluttered aisle and my palm was over his mouth in an instant. No one noticed. The train galloped on, except the girl. With one eye open, one still in a dream, the book thief, also known as Liesel Miminger, could see without question that her younger brother Werner was now a sideways and dead. His blue eyes stayed at the floor, saying nothing. Prior to waking up, the book thief had been dreaming about the Führer, Adolf Hitler. In the dream, she was attending a rally at which he spoke, looking at the skull colored part in the hair and the perfect square of his mustache. She was listening contentedly to the torrent of words that was spilling from his mouth. His sentences glowed in the light. In a quieter moment, he actually crouched down and smiled at her. She returned the gesture and said, Guten Tag, Herr Führer. Wie geht's dir heute? She hadn't learned to speak too well or even to read, as she had really frequented school. The reason for that she would find out in due course. Just as the Führer was about to reply, she woke up. It was January 1939. She was 9 years old, soon to be 10. Her brother was dead. One eye open, one still in a dream. It will be better for a complete dream, I think, but I really have no control over that. The second I jumped awake and she caught me out, no doubt about it. It was exactly when I kneeled down and extracted his soul, holding it limply in my swollen arms. He wound up soon after. But when I picked him up originally, the boy's spirit was soft and cold, like ice cream. He started melting in my arms, then warming up, completely healing. For Liesel Miminger, there was the imprisoned stiffness of movement and the staggered onslaught of thoughts as steaming Nietzsche. This isn't happening, this isn't happening. And the shaking, why do they always shake them? Yes, I know. I assume it has something to do with instinct. To stem the flow of truth, her heart, that at that point was slippery and hot and loud, so loud, so loud. Stupidly, I stayed and watched. Next, her mother. She woke her up with the same distraught shake. If you can't imagine it, think clumsy silence, think bits and pieces of floating despair and drowning in a train. Snow had been falling consistently, and the service of Munich was forced to stop due to faulty track work. There was a woman wailing. A girl stood numbly next to her. In panic, the mother opened the door. She climbed down into the snow, holding the small boy. What could the girl do but follow? As you are being informed, two guards also exited the train. They discussed and argued over what to do. The situation was unsavory to say the least. It was eventually decided that all three of them should be taken to the next township and left there to sort things out. This time the train limped through the snowed in country. It hobbled in and stopped. They stepped onto the platform. The body in her mother's arm. They stood. The boy was getting heavy. Liesel has no idea where she was. All was white, and as they remained at the station, she could only stare at the faded lettering of the sign in front of her. For Liesel, the town was nameless, and it was there that her brother Werner was buried 2 days later. Witnesses included a priest and two shivering grave diggers. An observation: a pair of train guards, a pair of grave diggers. When it came down to it, one of them called the shots, the other did what he was told. The question is, what if the other is a lot more than one? Mistakes is all I seem capable of at times. For 2 days I went about my business. I traveled the globe as always, handing souls to the conveyor belt of eternity. I watched them trundle passively on. Several times I warmed myself, and I should keep a good distance from the burial of Leisure Meminger's brother. I did not heed my advice. For miles away, as I approached, I could already see the small group of humans standing frigidly amongst the wasteland of snow. The cemetery welcomed me like a friend, and soon I was with them. I bowed my head. Standing to Leisure's left, the gravediggers were rubbing their hands together and winging about the snow and the current digging conditions, so hard getting through all the ice, and so forth. One of them couldn't have been more than 14. And appreciate, when he walked away, a black book fell innocuously from his coat pocket without his knowledge. He did it taken perhaps 2 dozen steps. A few minutes later, Liegel's mother started living with the priest. She was thanking him for his performance of the ceremony. The girl, however, stayed. Her knees entered the ground. Her movement had arrived. Still in disbelief, she started to dig. He couldn't be dead. He couldn't be dead. He couldn't. Within seconds, the snow was carved into her skin. Frozen blood was cracked across her hands. Somewhere in all the snow, she could see her broken heart in two pieces. Each half was glowing and beating under all that white. She only realized her mother had come back for her when she felt the boniness of a hand on her shoulder. She was being dragged away. A warm scream filled her throat. A small image, perhaps 20 meters away. When the dragging was done, the mother and the girl stood and breathed. There was something black and rectangular lodged in the snow. Only the girl saw it. She bent down and picked it up and held it firmly in her fingers. The book had silver writing on it. They held hands. A final soaking farewell was let go of, and they turned and left, looking back several times. As for me, I remained a few moments longer. I waved. No one waved back. Mother and daughter vacated the cemetery and made their way towards the next train to Munich. Both were skinny and pale. Both had sores on their lips. Liesel noticed it in the dirty, fogged up window of the train when they boarded just before midday. In the written words of the book thief herself, the journey continued like everything had happened. When the train pulled into the Bahnhof in Munich, the passengers slid out as it from a torn package. There were people of every stature, but amongst them the poor were the most easily recognized. The impoverished always try to keep moving as if relocating might help. They ignore the reality that a new version of the same old problem will be waiting at the end of the trip. The relative you cringe to kiss. I think her mother knew this quite well. She wasn't delivering her child to the higher equivalents of Munich, but a foster home had apparently been found, and if nothing else, the new family could at least feed the girl and the boy a little better and educate them properly. The boy, Leisure, was sure her mother carried the memory of him slung over her shoulder. She dropped him. She saw his feet and legs and body slap the platform. How could she walk? How could she move? That's the sort of thing I will never know for comprehend that what humans are capable of. She picked up and continued walking, the girl clinging on her side to her side. Authorities were met and questions of lateness, and the boy raised their vulnerable heads. Leisure remained in the corner of the small, dusty office, and her mother sat with clenched thoughts on a very hard chair. There was a chaos of goodbye. The girl's head was buried into the woolly, worn shallows of her mother's coat. There had been some more dragging. Quite a way beyond the outskirts of Munich was a town called Molching, said but best by the likes of you and me as Mole King. That's where they were taking her, to a street by the name of Himmel. A translation: Himmel, heaven. Whoever named Himmel Street certainly had a healthy sense of irony that not it was a living hell, it wasn't, but it was as sure as hell wasn't heaven either. Regardless, Leisure's foster parents were waiting, the Hubermans. They had been expecting a girl and a boy and would be paid a small allowance for having them. Nobody wanted to be the one to tell Rosa Huberman that the boy hadn't survived the trip. In fact, no one ever really wanted to tell her anything. As far as dispositions go, hers wasn't really enviable, although she had had a good record with foster kids in the past. Apparently, she did straighten a few out. For Liesel, it was a ride in a car. She did never been in one before. There was the constant ride and fall of her stomach, and the futile hope that they had lose the way or change their minds. Amongst it all, their thoughts couldn't help returning towards her mother, back at the Bahnhof, waiting to leave again, shivering, bundled up in that useless coat. She did be eating her nails, waiting for the train. The platform would be long and uncomfortable. A slice of cold cement would she keep an eye out for the approximate burial site of her son on the return trip, or would keep sleep be too heavy? The car moved with leisure, dreading the last lethal turn. The day was grey, the colour of Europe. Curtains of rain were drawn around the car. Nearly there, the foster care lady, how Friendhitch, turned and smiled. Dean knows him. You knew your new home. Liesel made a clear circle on the dribbled glass and looked out. A photo of Himmel Street. The buildings appear to be glued together, mostly small houses and blocks that look nervous. There is murky snow spread out like carpet. There is concrete, empty hat stand, trees, and grey air. A man was also in the car. He remained with the girl while Frau Heinrich disappeared inside. He never spoke. Liesel assumed he was there to make sure she didn't run away or to force her inside if she gave them any trouble. trouble. Later, however, when the trouble did start, he simply sat there and watched. Perhaps he was the last resort, the final solution. After a few minutes, a very tall man came out, Hans Huberman, Liegel's foster father. On one side of him was the medium height Frau Heinrich. On the other was the squat shape of Rosa Huberman, who looked like a small wardrobe with a coat thrown over it. There was a distant waddle to her walk, almost cute if it hadn't been for her face, which was like creased up cardboard and annoyed, and as if she was merely tolerating all of it. Her husband walked straight with a cigarette smoldering between his fingers. He rolled his own. The fact was this: Liesel would not get out of the car. Was it a lost mid-December kind? Rosa Huberman inquired. She said it again. What's wrong with the child, with this child? She stuck her face inside the car and said, Now come. The seat in front was flung forward. A corridor of cold light invited her out. She would not move. Outside through the circle she did made, Liesel could see the tall man's fingers still holding the cigarette. Ash stumbled from its edge and lunged and lifted several times before it hit the ground. 15 minutes passed till they were able to coax her from the car. It was the tall man who did it, quietly. There was the gate next, which she clung to. A gang of tears trudged from her eyes as she held on and refused to go inside. People started to gather on the street until Rosa Huberman swore at them, after which they reversed back whence they came. A translation of Rosa Huberman's announcement. What are you arseholes looking at? RC holes looking at. Eventually, Liesel Miminger walked gingerly inside. Hans Huberman had her by one hand. Her small suitcase had her by the other, buried beneath the folded layer of clothes. In that suitcase was a small black book, which, for all we know, a 14-year-old gravedigger in a nameless town had probably spent the last few hours looking for. I promise you, I imagine him saying to his boss, I have no idea what happened to it. I have looked everywhere. I am sure he would never have suspected the girl. And yet there was it, a black book with silver words written against the ceiling on her clothes. The Gravedigger's Handbook, a 12-step guide to grave digging success, published by the Bayonne Cemetery Association. The book thief had struck for the first time, the beginning of an illustrious career. यहाँ पे हमारा फर्स्ट चैप्टर ख़त्म होता है. अराइवल ऑन हिम्मल स्ट्रीट. यहाँ पे स्ट्रीट पर अराइवल हो गया उसका. ग्लोइंग अप अ सॉसमेंश, ये पढ़ेंगे हम नेक्स्ट वीडियो में. बाय फॉर नाउ. थैंक यू वेरी मच. बाय. मिलेंगे नेक्स्ट वीडियो में दोस्तों. बाय.